we've obviously gone through a lot of change this year, and I'm sure most of us are ready for that break, put our feet up and have a bit of fun and normality. So, but before we do that, I think it's good for us to kind of look into 2021 and almost reassess and say, okay, well, we've gone through a lot of change. We've had COVID that has come to our organisations, businesses. We've had to react to that. We've had to be agile. Brexit kind of came with the first announcement and then is still lingering as we speak. But that's a big change that's impacting organisations. But what other changes are going to come? And actually, how do businesses, how do IT functions effectively make sure that they're adaptable, not just agile within those times? So forward thinking and positioning themselves for success, not just business continuity planning in the background when they come along. So that's the conversation. We've got a great panel, and we'll get to that shortly. Just a bit about us. I'm sure a lot of you on the webinar today know us because you're working with us. But if you're yet to, and you found the link online, delighted to have you with us. And in effect, we sit across a very interesting space of the full development cycle, from recruiting new people into the IT space through to developing existing staff, upskilling existing staff, through to short course training for individuals that want to upskill. We've been doing that for 20 years. Next year actually officially is our 20th year, and we'll be looking to celebrate that. So that's us, but we really do come in that solution space, reacting to innovation in the market. And as you can see from this next slide, you've got BCS on there and CompTIA. One of the things we're very conscious of doing is working with great organisations in partnership, developing good practice, further boosting the quality of what we're delivering, and making sure that learners are getting the right accreditation at the end of it. And that's what we're very keen to make sure happens. You can see there over 7,000 candidates into tech roles, and that's growing all the time across a number of programs. And we're delighted to get the feedback we do. We take feedback very well, we embrace that because that's the only way we'll improve. So we like dialogue with our clients to further what we're doing and the part that we play in fulfilling great need in a dynamic economy in the IT space. And if we can move on to our IT decision maker survey. So this time of year, we just wanted to have a reach out into the market, understand some of the key kind of bits that are on people's agenda. We've just put out a few of those items here. So thank you, James. So we've got here, what are the main drivers for change over the past 12 months? No surprise, top of there is increased remote working. I think what's interesting there is why you'll see on the right, it's kind of backed up by Institute of Directors survey, and you know, 74% planning on maintaining their increased in-home working. That's a dynamic and moving stat, and you know, there's various different portals which will spout percentages every now and again. I think that'll be an interesting change and dynamic as we move forward into the new year. People having the opportunity to go back to the office, what does that look like? I know businesses are reassessing their real estate as we speak, but interesting to see how that lands and ultimately how that impacts IT and IT responds to it. I think the other big one to flag it, I mean, aside from staff restructuring, which is kind of obvious in these times that are taking place, but the digital change projects. You know, we have had change projects, many organisations that go on year, and new ones come on board. Some of those were stalled during COVID. You know, what does that look like as we come out? And I know Richard in the panel discussion will pick up on that. How does that impact, you know, the COVID phase as we come out too? So we'll look at that in a bit further, and I'm sure Richard will get the panel to reflect on that. We just move on to the next finding here is, you know, what do you see as being most important to improving IT? I guess it wasn't a surprise because we know that skills, we're in the skills business, that's who we are, what we do. that was very high. But interestingly, you know, how high and how assertive that stat is, and again backed up by BCS, 63%. You know, the reality is, yes, you hear about the need for solutions and these big costly tech projects, but ultimately it all boils down to is know-how and capability and who can deliver that, and that's the skills bit, and that's where we work very closely. Again, on the new hiring piece, bringing talent to organisations, or on the upskilling of staff when they come on board. So we'll look at that in a bit more detail. I think the others there, security and moving to the cloud, will be very much discussed later, but you know, that has really accelerated. Whereas people before, the cloud considered a really important feature, and more than that, adding great value. What was on the nice to have Santa list has now gone to priority, top of the list, you know, real important. And that's a result of people working from home. You know, security likewise, much more dynamic movement of staff engaging with technologies in different ways and from different locations. Massive changes to security there. So again, some interesting stats. And then a bit about business analysts. And you know, as this conversation develops, we'll bring in the views of business or a couple of business analysts, subject matter experts we've got with us today, really to focus in on their role in it, because as we look at that capability piece, that always comes back to a question around strategy, aligning strategy and tech, and how those two interplay. And it was interesting here. Yes, there is 36% engaging with business analysts. I guess there's a question there. Could they be more involved? Is there a role for them to be more involved? Would that take place in 2021? And we can pick that up in the conversation. So just some kind of key bits to link into what we're discussing today. And I'm going to hand back to James now just to launch a poll.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Some really good findings from our results there. Really nice reading. So the first poll is up on our screens now. So I'm going to just share the poll so you can then have the voting compatibility to this now. So it's going to be coming to you right now, and I will share the results. So if I will launch the poll, it should be coming onto your screens. So you've got three options there in terms of the most important IT solutions for your business in 2021. If you can vote either cloud security or power apps, we're seeing quite a few votes coming through. So I'll give you another 5 more seconds before I launch the results back to you, Andrew. So that is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me close and share the results with you now, Andrew. The results are as follows.
Thank you very much. Yeah, interesting. I'm not going to comment. I'm not an IT expert. That's not my field. And I'm going to defer to great panelists that we've got to kind of reflect on that. But I think what is interesting here, we obviously narrowed that poll down. There are others obviously that are out there. If you wanted to put into the Q&A, the chat function, sorry, others that are important to yourself, feel free to. We just wanted to get a lens on these three, and so we can unpack them a bit further. And we will now go into the real bit of why we're all here today. It's actually to hear from the panelists, not to hear from me. We are delighted to have 4 fantastic panelists on. So if I can invite you all to just turn on your cameras and your video, and we'll just go round and have some introductions. So just a kind of a brief kind of top level introduction. If I come to you, Daniel, happy birthday. I hope you don't mind me announcing that, and thank you for joining us on this day. And Daniel has an amazing trick of not only being the MD of TTech, he can weightlift bikes while doing so on his shoulders. So Daniel, bit of an intro from yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Andrew for the banter. I'll be sure to reciprocate. Yeah, so my name's Daniel Teacher. I'm MD of T-Tech. We're a consultancy and managed service provider, specifically working within the accountancy sector, but also with many SMEs. I grew up as a techie and a management consultant and ended up doing this. And I guess, you know, we really help people with just their day-to-day IT needs, but also we're very strong on the automation and robotics and kind of process improvement side. It's very interesting actually to see the Power Apps float thing previously. We do a lot of that, but I'm sure we'll come back to that.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be great to hear your insights on that. So, Gavin, just over to you, sir, by way of introduction. Thank you for your time today.
Sure, thanks very much, Andrew. Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties of the webcam, as it's always the way whenever you're trying to do something, technology fails, but that's why we're all here, which I think is always good. So yeah, I've been in the IT industry for 20 plus years in various different roles, but I currently work for Chess. We're a provider of managed services, IT security services, digital transformation, and telco and networking services. So quite a wide kind of variety of technical services that we provide to all levels of organisation.
Fantastic, absolutely, and yeah, we're really thankful for your time. I know that you bring a great skill set from what you're currently doing, but the transformation piece from our briefing calls before this. I'd be delighted to hear from you in the discussion. So if I may introduce or get Sumit to introduce your good self, please.
Hello guys, hopefully you can hear me. My name's Sumit. I'm pretty much an independent consultant, but a hybrid. So I transcend the business and the IT and equally across change. So start off as a BA, progress to project management, and quite often find myself as a business architect. So massive IT champion, and really excited to be on the talk today. Fantastic,
thank you, Sumit. Looking forward to unpacking some of those slides that you've got for us later. And Paul, if I can come to you, sir, thanks for joining us. Please, could you introduce yourself?
It's a great honour to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I've been in IT since the mid-80s. I started off at IBM as a humble analyst programmer, and I moved quickly into systems analysis and solution development, and then from there into business analysis and change across a whole range of sectors over the years. So I feel very sympathetic towards IT, having come from there. That was where I cut my teeth. But I also see the need for business analysis to make IT most effective. In between times, I co-founded and developed the financial systems for a malaria relief agency. I co-founded a software consultancy and was responsible for their finance and development as well. And now, as the bio says, I'm focusing on training and coaching mid-career apprentices in business analysis, because a lot of people are interested in that transition, and I'm happy to help.
Fantastic, great stuff. Absolutely delighted to have you here. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our Client Services Director, Richard Lambden. And if I can just ask Paul and Sumit, if you want to turn your cameras off and mute for now, and Richard will bring you back into the conversation at relevant point. Over to you, Richard. Look forward to hearing how this discussion evolves. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody. Daniel, I'm going to come to you, and it's in addition to it being your birthday, I think I'm right in saying that T-Tech were recently voted the Outsourcing Company of the Year. So many congratulations to you and your team on that. If I can start with you, could you perhaps share some examples of the sorts of challenges, shall we say, the clients that you have worked with have kind of faced over the last 6 to 12 months, and how you've gone about supporting them?
Sure. I guess I'd put the clients into two groups: those that were better prepared and those that were less prepared. So those.
Dare I ask how many were in each, Daniel? Would you say more were prepared than not?
It's a real mix, if I'm honest. So you know, the clients that I guess really committed to cloud, you know, everybody had a laptop, everybody had a headset, everybody had Teams already, and you know, they literally picked up their laptops and went home. So this whole lockdown running around didn't really exist for them. They had some other business process challenges around bits of paper and getting stuff signed, but you know, it's really pleasing to hear from those clients where they just went, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. You know, we just, and I guess then there was, and I'm probably not that different from us, from a lot of firms. And then there were the group of clients where some people had laptops and some not, and they were all involved in that very big rush where there was a global shortage, probably highest laptop sales in 1 month probably ever, I would imagine. And I think those businesses actually struggled on two fronts. One, because they didn't really understand the cloud and how modern ways of working are, but also they are even more paper-based. I mean, I know one law firm who specialize in patent registration, and it was just a disaster for them. Like, they had to rebuild all their business processes from the beginning because it was so paper-based. So they literally had 6 weeks where they were just working out, like inventing new processes on the fly. Sorry, excuse me. So I think, you know, everyone has had to make an adjustment, but I guess there's huge varying degrees of adjustment. And for us as our service desk, because of the way we operate, it was a nothing, if I'm honest. We just picked up our laptops and carried on. So, you know, there's a huge spectrum there of differing capabilities.
Superb, thank you. Gavin, if I can come to you and perhaps reflect on those poll results, just to remind you, I think 47% said cloud, 18% security, and 35% power apps. So, you know, in reflection to that, what have you seen as the kind of the key drivers and changes over the last month, and reflect on that poll for me?
Sure. Well, you know, I'd absolutely echo what was in that poll. I mean, you know, cloud adoption has been a driver for businesses for a number of years now, and I think the last 6 to 12 months has really accelerated that program for a number of businesses. As Daniel mentioned, a number of businesses were already on that journey and quite a long way down, and they were the ones who were very prepared. But for businesses that had that, who weren't really along that journey, I think the situation that we've been in has it kind of accelerated their plans. Some of those plans were well fleshed out, some of those plans maybe not, but certainly the key drivers are always cloud. And sort of from my insight as running the internal infrastructure and systems for our business, as well as looking after our client side, we've had a strategy in place for, you know, it's always been cloud first and cloud native. That's really been the key driver for us. So always, whenever we're picking a new solution, whenever we're looking at technology, we go, well, you know, is it serviceable in the cloud? Is it a cloud-based system? And if we're building in the cloud, are we taking advantage of those cloud native tool sets? Are we building using Azure services? SQL as a service, for example, is much better than trying to just lift and shift a virtualized workload into the cloud. So certainly having that kind of robust strategy in place has really been a key driver for businesses, I think. Security again has been way up there, and you know, after a period of rapid change with any organization, securing any work that's been done is absolutely important. And you know, we've seen that very recently in the press, with even a company who specializes in security, such as FireEye, have come under attack themselves. And you know, if any business goes under any sort of organizational change or business process change, then having someone come and look at that security stance and making sure that they are secure is fundamentally important.
And then, is that more important, Gavin, sorry to cut across you, is that more important with more and more people working remotely and, you know, over VPNs and all this kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it is. I mean, the traditional landscape of, you know, network infrastructure has been breaking down for the last couple of years, but really what we're getting into now is, that there are, you don't have an office that's ring fenced by a firewall and various layers of protection. It used to be, like an onion. So you'd have a firewall, then you'd have a web application firewall, then you'd have email filtering, and that would all be centric around either your data center or your office that you were based in. Now, obviously, we're applying those technologies through cloud services such as firewalls as a service and secure web gateways and things like that. And these technologies are kind of coming together, and I think they're really starting to come into their own now as a security option for securing the remote workforce and being able to offer the same level of security as someone at home as they would do in a traditional office environment.
And in terms of Power Apps, have you seen a take up on those?
Yeah, we certainly have. So we've been doing Power Apps with a number of our businesses for a long time. We're an early adopter of Teams and the Power Apps infrastructure. We are certainly seeing the advantages of the Power Apps themselves and Power Automate. Power Automate is a massively powerful tool that can be used within an organisation to automate out the boring, repetitive processes and allow your business to focus on the parts of the business that either make you money or where you need to focus your real technical talent. And it's been really transformational for some organisations. And Power Apps obviously includes Power BI. And if you're invested in the Microsoft infrastructure and ecosystem, and being able to utilise that Power BI suite is incredibly powerful. And then surfacing it all through Teams. So it's the collaboration element of that it can't be underestimated in terms of its power.
Excellent, thank you, Daniel. Is that reflected with your client base as well? Have you seen similar trends?
Yeah, no,
particularly in that, you said the accountancy field, didn't you? So are they using that sort of technology?
IT's gone up in currency now, hasn't it? I don't think any client would ever argue with us ever again that IT is really important to them. And if they ever said, we can't afford it, I'll say, well, maybe think about your office costs. I think that argument has gone up significantly. And so I think not only is the kind of the currency gone up and the value gone up, but also people realize that they can't operate really without it. It's gone, even if you look in 5 years, I would say it's gone from maybe 5 or 7 years ago, it's gone from it was probably important to pretty critical, and I would say some businesses found it pretty critical, and now it's ubiquitous. And with the team stuff, like I don't know a business that can really operate without it. And so it, and the work, this whole pandemic has just I think Satya Nadella said, we've had 2-3 years of progress in 2 months, and he's right. Like a lot of the barriers just went, people are cutting budgets, but you're not going to cut your IT budget, that's for sure. And so I think everyone is realizing they haven't even got a choice anymore.
Can I move it on to a slightly different kind of big event, Daniel, if I may? Obviously, we've kind of focused, I guess, a little bit on COVID, but we've obviously got Brexit potentially coming up. Boris gets it sorted over his fish supper, and obviously we've kind of got used to, I guess, being dictated to, I was going to say, by kind of data-driven algorithms that have kind of worked out tiers and that we're all in and that kind of stuff. So if you kind of look at the future and what impact, say, Brexit might have on business continuity, on issues such as data integrity, GDPR implications, security of people's websites, trading abroad, etc., etc. What sort of, what are the consequences you think from your perspective, Daniel? Are you hearing that from your clients as a concern?
I'm a bit of an optimist when it comes to this, if I'm honest. I think that the bloc, we are more important to them than they are to us. If you look at our GDP versus, like I think it's 2% of our GDP would be impacted. I think 1/3 of all German cars hit the UK or some ridiculous statistic like that. So whatever happens, I don't think that anybody can afford for it not to work. There's just too much integration and too much going on. So yes, there'll be inconveniences, but I don't know how much you know about the foreign exchange markets, but 70% of all European FX goes through London. I mean, you're not going to be able to move, to move that kind of capability out is a 5-year project. And people talk about, banks moving swathes of people out. They haven't done that. And London is a tech hub and a finance hub. And so my honest view is it's just too important that it can't not work, and we'll all just find a way. And maybe that's optimistic, and even GDPR, they've already agreed that it's going to be harmonized. So that the GDPR one, at least, that was dealt with a while ago. I'm sure there's going to be bumps, but I just don't.
Daniel, we're going to have another webinar in 6 months. We've recorded this. I'm going to hold you to account. That optimism. Gavin, I read a report last week. Those of you that are connected with BCS will know they ran a really impressive interactive conference all week that you could kind of dial into, and out of that came a report that actually we're going to share with the audience after today's webinar. And just to give you a bit of a headline, the Digital Leaders Report said that 63% of leaders said that they needed to enhance IT capability in the existing workforce, 37% in the leadership team itself, and 39% said they needed to employ new IT staff. So with that thought in mind, Gavin, where are you seeing in the kind of tech and digital space where the skill shortages are impacting organisations in terms of making the changes and the transformations?
Well, I mean, I say, having been in IT for an awful long time, there's always, in my opinion, been a skills shortage in general in the IT space, which I think has which has always been sort of semi-apparent. At the moment, I think the biggest skills-based shortages are definitely in security specialisms, certainly in terms of people who do security for their bread and butter. That is, penetration testers, that type of environment, but also in the cloud services. So specialist cloud services engineers, people who are familiar with Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, etc., and actual people who are able to architect solutions for businesses in those particular spaces. So I think that they're where we're probably seeing the most shortages of staff at the moment. Obviously, some of the more specialised skill sets can be covered off by the use of MSPs, MSSPs, and managed support providers. So augmenting your IT department with specialists in those particular areas who can take that for you or be your first port of call in the event of an issue, I think is something that's been that's going to come to the fore as well in moving through the next year.
Thank you. At this point, if we could kind of move on to the second part of the conversation, and Paul and Sumit, if you'd be kind enough to join us back up on the screen and unmute yourselves. Taking it on from that last question, Paul, perhaps you said you're involved in training and coaching of kind of mid-level colleagues, including apprenticeship schemes. I mean, how do you think training programs such as apprenticeships can support that skill gap that Gavin was just talking about?
Well, I think it's the only way, in the sense that there aren't enough professionals with the right skills at the moment, and so we've got to do it somehow. We've got to skill them up somehow. So to answer the question directly, if anyone else can come up with another way of doing it than training people to perform these roles, then I'd be interested to hear it. I guess we're going to come on to looking at how BAs play a part, and therefore why we need to bring them in. But,
absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Paul. So, I mean, that beautiful segue into Summit, because we're very honoured to have the first ever international diploma BCS achiever in Summit on the call today, which is no mean feat in itself. So, Paul's asked the question for me, Summit. How do BAs help CTOs, to help the sort of people that Daniel and Gavin are interacting with, and obviously Gavin is a CTO himself? How do they help leadership teams solve some of the challenges that they're facing in the coming months? Thinking into 2021 now.
Okay, so I think by the virtue of the role that BAs perform, you know, being on lots of projects, they get to interact with all levels of the organisation, different teams, and they invariably just build a lot of these relationships over time. So they almost have this tacit knowledge that's not really commoditized or used, but really just focused on projects that the business or, you know, from above get put upon them. So I think it's really time for BAs to become those trusted advisors and really leverage a lot of their information, but as change catalysts, you know, not just be change experts, but be that initiation for change. And there's some good examples I've seen over the last year alone where, you know, everyone's working from home now, call centers, staff are working in their bedrooms. But a very real problem in the early days was that where you get your call metric screens in call centers dotted all over, which kind of really lets people visually see, oh, I need to jump on the phone. People forgot that people in their bedrooms are almost just isolated. They had the capability to take calls and do their work, but how could you, from a management point of view, direct them to jump on the phones, jump off the phones? And a lot of that was really corrected by BA saying, well, actually, could we get a solution on their desktops? Do we need to kind of set up meetings? So I think BAs have a role to play in facilitating, especially for next year.
Excellent. I mean, I was on a webinar run by somebody else 2 weeks ago, and I heard the expression that I think BAs are critical friends, in the sense that, you know, that they're obviously sensibly challenging what's going on. So, Paul, with that thought in mind, you know, how does the role of kind of gap analysis that BAs will look at help to align, let's say, the IT strategy of organisations with the overall business strategy, to ensure those drivers are kind of relevant and stop them going off track?
Gap analysis, it's a routine skill that all business analysts bring to bear. It's conceptually very easy to describe and understand, and I'm sure Sumit will agree, in practice, extremely challenging, but it's absolutely vital. It's how, when we finally understood what our as-is activities and operational behavior is, and we also understand where we want to be, it's gap analysis that helps us to see how we move from one to the other. And just a little insight while we're on it, gap analysis can work in both directions. If you're a large organization, you're thinking mostly of where are we now and how are we going to move to where we want to go, and we can drive the IT to make that happen for us in most cases. It's not just IT. If you take a holistic view of the organization, obviously you're looking right the way across people, processes, information and technology across the organization, but you're driving it in that direction because you're a big organization and you can. But there are a lot of SMEs out there that they might want to choose a new accountancy package or something like that. You know, straightforward questions. They can't contact Sage or other providers that are available and tell them how they want the package to be. They have to go in the opposite direction. So they have to research the packages out there, see what features are available, decide what's important for them, what's not so important, and then, hopefully, after some careful consideration, pick the one that suits them. So it's a gap analysis. You need it in either way, in either case.
Fantastic. James, would you be kind enough to move on to the next slide for me? And Sumit, I would imagine that some IT changes, IT change roadmaps have had to be put on hold because of COVID. They probably stalled. Let's be honest. Different, you know, decisions have had to be made. So, what impacts that had on potentially demand for key personnel, and kind of relate it back to almost the career path that we're showing on the screen now, if you would, for a moment or so.
Yeah, sure. So I think with COVID impacting, you know, change roadmaps around March of this year, that also coincided with the IR35 regulations. So 2020 was already a jam-packed year for most organizations and most of my clients. And then in Q1, their roadmaps were really effectively almost written off because they just didn't have the right amount of people, the skill sets, or even the ability to execute those plans. So I think what's quite key for next year is, in that context, you need to get your resourcing right. You need to really understand your key personnel, but they need development. And this kind of almost a really simple kind of career wheel or path shows that, you know, across 4 domains, if you get the people in at the right level, you kind of build them out, and you have succession planning. So with human capital and resources being the most important part of organizations, I think next year should be really where a lot of my clients as well come true on their promises, develop from within, but to a point that I think was made earlier by Gavin, you know, where they don't have those skill sets, get externally and complement with your internal staff. You will grow in tandem.
Yeah, there was an interesting in the BCS digital leaders report that I referenced earlier that we'll send out afterwards. Anthony Impney, who is the small business advisor to government and well known in this sector, he reckoned that 73% of SMEs want support with both digitalization but also digital upskilling, which I guess is the kind of the point that you're making there. In terms of the next slide, James, if you can move it on. I know you have a bit of a passion. You said earlier, Sumit, in your bio, you kind of moved into the business architecture space. So what role does that play in kind of holding businesses together, but also in kind of shaping their future strategy?
Great. So business architecture is very esoteric. It's really hard to articulate, but I think this slide does it well, where, you know, you've got your C-suite, have a strategy in mind, a vision, a roadmap, and you've got your change people, you know, delivering changes and kind of, you know, we've spoken about today from the gap analysis point of view. You've got your current state, you want somewhere to go from a target state, but quite often what you strategize or view doesn't actually get delivered. There isn't that feedback and it's not symbiotic. So with business architecture or architecture itself, it becomes that anchor point. And I think, you know, a key role that I take, or remit, is understand the strategy across a few slides from what they want. In any given year, only 1 or 2 things are going to be important for the board, and then translate them to the teams and the experts who actually don't just deliver blindly, but actually kind of provide feedback, you know, whether it's the accountancy software package selection, whether it's, you know, whether we need to go resource outside and so forth. And that really brings about a continuous feedback. So I think the slide does it justice in terms of there's a good anchor point there, and they work across both the strategy and the execution piece. And you can start to almost go backwards from execution up the chain to strategy.
Excellent. Paul, I think you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I got this wrong, you mentioned you'd been involved in setting up, I think, was it a charity abroad somewhere that you said you kind of co-founded? Was that, just remind me what that was involved with?
It's a charity. It's still running today. It specializes in malaria relief in complex emergencies. And I used to say, slightly tongue-in-cheek, where 2 or more horses of the apocalypse are riding together. Where you might have a war or an earthquake or a tsunami. Remember the Boxing Day tsunami in the Indian Ocean? We were there about 10 to 12 days after that tsunami, setting up a response to it. In the very few buildings that were still standing in Banda Aceh on the tip of the Sumatran Peninsula. So a different kind of situation to IBM where I started work, but go ahead with your question.
It's another kind of big event, isn't it? It's the kind of the link. If you think we've had COVID, we've obviously got Brexit, and there was that kind of event. Another event that is coming down the line, and it's kind of quite ironic that we have pedal power positioned nicely behind Daniel, because we've seen from the ambitious plans that the Prime Minister set out that we're all going to be driving electric cars by 2030, I think, as we move to a more green environment. So Daniel is leading the way on that front. But Paul, do you know, if we think of it as an environmental factor, if I will, and then I'll ask the other 3 of you the same question, you know, is that going to have an impact on IT too. I mean, Daniel talked about, the rollout of laptops left, right, and centre. I'm not sure how green that is. But Paul, from your perspective, do you think the environment is going to impact on the IT space the same as it is on electric cars, to use my analogy?
Well, in one word, yes. Just to say a little bit more about political decisions, because I was going to say it's often the political environment that is the most difficult to react to. I mean, right now, today, we don't know whether there's going to be a deal or no deal. That has a massive impact on many organizations. I'm maybe not quite so sanguine as Daniel was. No disrespect, Daniel, but we'll see. Regarding climate change and environmental responses to environmental impacts, it's the same. I mean, I think climate change commitments, political commitments, are more volatile than the climate of which the change we're trying to mitigate. You've got to. It is the political decisions are the most difficult ones to respond to. So that's why we need to be ready for them. And going back to what Sumit was saying about architecture, is having our architecture in order, putting our house in order, so that we can react.
Daniel, what are your thoughts in terms of the environmental factors on the future of IT and how we might all be impacted in the next 10 years? Yeah, well, obviously that's too big a question there, but you're blowing your cheeks out there. But seriously, is it going to impact us as an end user?
I don't know. Microsoft and Google are making a lot of noise about this, and Microsoft recently committed to this carbon neutral initiative. As an end user, particularly for SMEs, generally you can have very little impact on that. Maybe if you're Deutsche Bank or Barclays, you can demand a bit more from the big vendors. But Joe Blogs can't have too much an impact on that. They're talking a lot about it. It will work if people see the benefit. People could. I think that's the important bit about it. And as I said, if people see a benefit and a gain, then they'll do it. If your cloud is going to be slower because you're going to have less servers on, then that isn't going to be okay. And
talk of your passion, Daniel. Did you see on the news? I think it was this week that an organisation have opened the first. I think it was in Essex, a forecourt that could cope with 36 electric cars being charged. Did anybody see that? The thing that got me when the guy was going around was you went into their service area and you could be on a bike doing some fitness and it was charging up the car below. So I reckon you've got a future, Daniel, in IT, getting away there to charge your laptop.
I know, but you haven't seen my car. My car is not eco-friendly.
Just thinking, if you wanted a future career change,
okay.
Get down to Essex. There's a job for you there, sir. Sumit, in terms of the environmental factors, and how is it going to impact you from a BA perspective?
I think it's really about the corporate social responsibilities of organisations. So I think a lot more people are conscious now about the environment. It's quite topical, and I googled it today that I think on a Netflix documentary, each Google search consumes about as much energy as powering a light bulb LED for 3 hours or 3 minutes. But people understand that nothing comes for free. These data centers and all this infrastructure, and with 5G and IoT. And I think the way that it's going to get addressed is organizations that try to resonate better with their customers, or maybe adhere to CSR targets. There will be projects coming down that BAs where they have to do some assessments, and in the world of IT we normally do TCOs, what's the total cost of ownership of operations, and I think that will play out over the next couple of years and be quite exciting bit to work for BAs.
Excellent. Gavin, same question to you. But are you hearing from your customer base? Are they starting to, request more environmental solutions, or is it a bit too soon for that?
It's not something that we're seeing particularly a large amount of in terms of. I mean, they're very much focused on their organisation and how IT benefits their organisation and is an enabler for their organisation. I mean, I would say I'm not sure how the world is going to consume more IT and more tech. Year on year we're consuming huge amounts of it, and it's only going to get there's only going to be more of it. But I actually think not necessarily the impact would be directly on climate, but it's actually, if you think about, how AlphaFold has been used to look at protein folding in the fight against disease, and particularly COVID, I think actually the computing power will help us solve some of these environmental issues. So actually, there is the flip side of, the technology that we're developing, and the technology, AI, things like that, will actually help with climate and climate issues that we've got, in terms of developing new materials and new ways of doing things.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you. I'm going to end with the same question to all four of you, and I'll start with you again, Gavin, if I may. Bearing in mind the theme of the talk today, and Daniel referenced it earlier, I think IT has never been more in the spotlight, has it? And more important. So, what is the one bit of advice, Gavin, starting with you, you would give to help organisations future-proof their IT capability? What would be the one bit of advice?
It's got to be a robust cloud strategy. It has to be robust cloud strategy. Yeah, make sure you know what you're doing and make sure it's secure.
Superb. Sumit?
I'd echo that. I think it's the IT departments really stepping up and coming to the top table as trusted advisors, to say these changes or IT propositions will enable the longevity of the business and allow them to meet their strategic goals. So I think the ownership's on the IT departments to step up and actually feed into that strategy and drive it as much as they can.
Superb. Paul, same question to you, sir. One bit of advice.
Speaking as somebody who's written IBM assembler programs, in design systems, and now in the BA space, I would say business analysis, it's about bringing the controlling mind to bear on the operation of the organization. So it's about bringing the controlling mind to bear. And if you don't do that, then everything else can be more or less directionless. It's really, really important. So please, those of you, 36% that didn't use BAs on your IT projects, or the 40+% that don't use them at all, have another think, unless you're a one-man band.
Superb. Yeah. And Daniel, last word to you. Thank you, Paul. Last word to you, Daniel, in terms of the bit of advice for future-proofing IT capability.
It's just got to be a board level item that every project I've ever done succeeds or fails on the management. The IT is secondary. If the board and the management are behind it, it will happen. If they're not, it won't. It literally is as simple as that. Whenever I'm talking to clients or selling them something, and they always say to me, "Why, what will go wrong?" And I say, "Your support." And I see it every time. Projects that don't go well, the clients don't give it the attention. The projects that do go well, the clients will overview. So if the client makes it a priority, it'll be fine.
Fantastic. Well, I'd just like to thank the panel. It's been a fascinating discussion and conversation. If you'd be kind enough to put yourselves on mute, I'll just conclude. I read a recent Microsoft research paper, and they'd identified a new model of competitiveness for next year, and they said it was a combination of talent, technology, and future readiness. And I think this discussion has amplified that beautifully. So, James, if I can hand back to you, I think we've got another poll for you to launch. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful panel discussion. Thank you very much, Richard. So yes, let's get you all involved now. I'm going to launch a second poll. The poll is, what would be the most in-demand IT skills in your organization going into 2021? So I'm going to launch the poll right now, and you have got 5 options here. So let's launch that poll. It should be coming onto your screen. The options are IT support, network engineering, security, data analyst, and cloud specialist. So if you can start by choosing the option that suits yourself and your organization into 2021. I can see quite a lot of votes coming in, but I'll give you 5 more seconds on that. So that is 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to close the poll now, and I'm going to share the results with you, and they should be coming onto your screen. So we've got 25% is IT support, network engineer at 0% on the current audience, 8% security, 25 data analyst, and off the back of a popular choice from our panelists, cloud support is at 42%. which brings us on to about, we want to bridge those skills gaps, and we are an apprenticeship and recruitment company. So how do we bridge that? And that is about talking about some of the apprenticeships that we've got to offer. So I'm going to hand you back to Mr. Andrew Walker, who's going to tell you a little bit about our IT and, of course, our business analyst apprenticeships. Andrew, over to you, sir.
Thank you, James. Yeah, really interesting to see those results, and what a segue. We'll go straight into talking about our IT support infrastructure technician apprenticeship. We've pulled out two here, obviously the ones that are relevant to the audience that we've got on today. So if you can just move on to the next slide. We're just giving you a top level flavour of what it is that we're offering. I think with all these things, it's more about a discussion with yourselves, understanding, hopefully this has sparked some thoughts that the role that the BA can have, but also, the IT skills and upskilling piece. And apprenticeships play a great role in the economy at the moment, but can always play a greater role. And what we've got on the screen at the moment is our infrastructure technician level 3 apprenticeship. The idea of an apprenticeship is basically that you're embedding the knowledge that you're learning into your day job. So from a business point of view, you're getting the value add straight away. And it also means that, as great as universities are, if you go into a program that's long, you can come out this side and almost what you've learned there is not defunct, but innovation's taking place. Learning also needs to be put into practice straight away. So great programs from that point of view. Their typical duration is 14 to 16 months. Every learner learns at a different pace, and we work with them to get the maximum benefit. And it depends on how quickly they can progress. They can progress a bit quicker, and there's room to do that effectively. And interestingly, they're getting a very well-rounded experience of the world of infrastructure technician. So they're touching on the second point on that slide, which is the cloud piece. They'll get a module in that. So getting a well-rounded individual in that space, but acknowledging that cloud is central to IT strategy and central to IT solutions. One of the reasons that some employers tend to bring in apprentices is, if they're kind of looking at a new hire, is actually it frees them up or their middle management up to start thinking a bit more strategically. So if we're talking about, what are these big impacting macro factors that might come along, like we've talked about COVID, Brexit, the environment, and many others that will come along. Actually, how does someone the senior people in the business get the time to devote their know-how to that? Well, actually, by bringing up a recruit at the entry level and freeing up time, and that's where our apprentices are proving of great value. I've put on the bottom there, certified by the BCS. We work very closely with them. Richard referenced that you'll be getting a link to their annual report, fantastic content in there. And we continually look at the programs and make sure that they're fit for market. The other good thing is that there's a CompTIA vendor qual in there as well. Won't talk in this too much detail, but progression of a learner through the program, getting effectively that well-rounded experience. So looking at the software side, the hardware side, looking at the coding and logic. As you'll see while they go through the program, they're also developing a portfolio. That's them embedding their knowledge into practice and then evidencing their back. And then, as you see at the very end, they'll come through to the endpoint assessment. We've got fantastic outcomes on this program. Great one to consider if you're looking to free up space for your management team and bring in new staff, and there's some great opportunity to upskill existing staff that might have come in but actually could benefit from this qualification to widen their skill set. Into the BA, interestingly, and thank you, Paul, for sharing when he did that. Have you thought about a BA? If you've not, BAs can come in as a new hire, but actually we've got a lot of business analysts on program at the moment who've been in the business and it maybe even evolved into a BA over time, but actually wanted to bolster their skill set, learn new techniques We talked about gap analysis earlier, but there are many others. As the career diagram that Sumit had up earlier shows so many facets to the role of a BA. And actually, this program that's certified by BCS really gives you that breadth and depth of skill set toolkit to embrace the BA context. So maybe you've got someone in your team actually, and you're saying at the moment, well, maybe we haven't really utilized a BA, but I've got someone who actually probably is gifted in that area and could transition into that area. That's where a business analyst apprenticeship can really provide the skills to that individual. They benefit from getting a qualification, but more importantly, they benefit from feeling more confident in their job by getting the tools to devote and interact with the business in the right way. As we've talked about, the linking the IT with the other senior stakeholders to make change work well. And so you can see there that who it's for and that it's certified by BCS. And just moving on to the learner journey, there's 4 certifications that the individuals will get throughout. So you can see the business analyst practice, requirements engineering, modeling business processes. We'll also get the BA foundation certificate, which is actually done a little bit later because we embed the knowledge and give them the opportunity to put that into practice, and then we'll get them through that qualification. They will then actually get an agile. We've talked about change. Agile methodologies in project management are very much being used across organizations. How does a BA interrelate with PMs? What's their role? So it's more of a contextual piece for allowing them to do their job, particularly in a dynamic and changing world that we're in. And then lastly, they can get their international diploma should they wish at the end of the program. Just coming up on screen, we've mentioned 2 programs. We have others. I think it was Gavin who mentioned Power BI and the importance of that. Actually creating data insight, business intelligence, that feeds very much into our data analyst program. We have lots of people. It's a very fast growing program. We could talk to you about that. Software development, network engineer, and digital marketing. Again, software developer seeing growth in the economy at the moment. And just lastly, we have a recruitment arm, and we've talked very much about upskilling here, but actually if you need to go in and get a more senior level person in one of those areas or mid-level, whether it be a perm hire or just a contracting person to come in, that's something that we are well skilled at doing. And lastly, we're delighted to work with some fantastic clients, and it is very much a partnership. You can see on screen a number that we've worked with across this area. Obviously the NHS, what a wonderful organisation to be working with at this time and into 2021. Delighted to, like you say, work with TTEC, and we've been partnering with Chess. Chess actually have supported our own IT, which is fantastic. But as you can see, a whole raft of very credible organisations, and no matter what size, we work with a lot of SMEs through to some well-known names as well. Thank you. So James, I'm just going to check in with yourself and Richard if we've got any other unanswered questions. I appreciate Richard's woven in a lot into that conversation already.
Andrew, it's we've been answering quite a lot of questions in the background, and a lot of the questions that have been coming in have actually been answered by the panel, which I thought was one of the best panels we've had in terms of discussions on this point. So the only thing that we had, a couple of questions, which actually is linked to the same thing, Andrew, was with regards to government increases and the incentives. Obviously, the Chancellor Rishi had talked about the incentives that people could have on new hires. Just a bit of a confirmation, 2 or 3 people have asked, has that now been extended beyond January 31st, 2021?
Yeah, it has. Basically, Rishi's extended that to March. And so there's a slight difference on depending on age, but 16 to 24s can get up to the £2,000 on top of the existing £1,000 incentives for the 16 to 18-year-olds, those in the know. will be familiar with that. And for new hire apprenticeships over 25, they'll be paid the 1,500. If anyone wants to further follow up on those incentives, I appreciate those are quite a good driver for bringing in people into a business. Then feel free, and I think James is going to put on some contact details very shortly. Contact either your account manager, or if you're new to us today, on the details shared, and we'd be delighted to kind of inform you as to how that works, how you access that funding, to ensure that you've got the right skills in tech.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Andrew. So Andrew just gave me a nice little segue there. Just talk about, if you want to continue the conversation with us, we'd love to hear from you. I know that a lot of you are our existing clients, but how can we talk about other opportunities, whether it is via our commercial training arm, our recruitment arm, or talking about further apprenticeships, particularly the IT or BA. Our website is there, the email, or you can reach out to your existing account manager, or our number is on that slide below. The one thing we do want to continue is our level of interaction towards our webinars, and we, as always, have already penciled in the next webinar, which is on Thursday, the 28th of January, same time at 12:30. And this is all to do with the evolution of IT and digital apprenticeship. So as IT evolves within your workplaces, the skills gap and the training that needs to go has to complement your needs in the industry. So the government and the industry bodies are currently looking at the evolution of the digital standards into the future, so we can make sure that we can complement your hiring and training needs. So please look out for the necessary flags via your account manager, obviously via our Twitter and LinkedIn portals, and of course it's always on the bottom of all of our email signatures. So what's left for me to say is I thank all of you for your participation. So not only your participation in attending the webinar today, but thank you once again to all of our Just IT staff, marketing team behind the slides, and also our fantastic team of panelists that have joined us here. We would love to hear your feedback. Here at Just IT, we want to strive to be the best we can. So please, after this, when we do close this, you will get a post-event survey that we'd love for you all to complete, so we can keep continuing these great service and webinars moving forward. Andrew, thank you very much for hosting, sir. It's a pleasure of always to be teaming up with you, and I wish you all a fantastic afternoon. And this will be our last webinar of 2020, so I wish you all a fantastic, merry and amazing Christmas and a happy new year, and we'll see you all on the webinar in January.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Cheers.